Hi Refine Preset community, Marta Lockley here to do another editing video for you guys today. I want to thank you guys for all joining us in these videos and subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to click down below and subscribe to us because we do hope to start adding videos at least once a week. That way you have a lot more content to watch. In our videos, you're going to see a variety of things: creative editing styles, how to edit with each individual preset, how to mix presets and tones, shooting techniques. While I'm going through the edits, I like to throw in a few, what you could have done different, how to get a better look, how to get more of that film look, things like that. So we definitely hope to make this a little more of a teaching experience on top of just editing. Let's go ahead and look at these images we have here. I have two photographers today, Lolo Orji, which are the top two images, and Lina Johansson, which are the bottom two images. And I want to show a little bit of creative editing and how you can get a variety of styles out of just the two preset packs we have available to you now, but to show you just how easy it is to adjust those presets quickly to achieve a few different looks. So let's just go ahead and get started. Let's start with this image from Lolo, and I'm going to keep it side by side most of the time because I really feel like it helps you guys see just how the preset works and what it's doing to the image as you're going through the preset. So I have Refine 1 here. I have Refine times Caroline Tran down here as well, and I'll kind of bounce back and forth between both so you guys can see the difference. And I hope to add in images as I go through this video. I think it helps to see them, pop up with the before and after while I'm editing. So let's go ahead. For this image, let's just start with Refined 1. And as you can see straight off this image, the white balance is a little warm, whether it's the way that she did her white balance in camera or if the scene itself was just a little bit warm. So you want to get your white balance correct as well. With that said, everybody needs to know, because it's the #1 troubleshooting email we get, is the colors just don't look right. And 9.5 times out of 10, it is the white balance. All presets, not just Refine presets, but any preset that you use. If your white balance isn't neutral or where it needs to be, most likely it will need to be tweaked in post-processing. So if you're having trouble colors, tweak the white balance a little and play with it. I like to start with the drop-down menu to the right here. This is as shot, and you can see you have a variety of options. Generally, auto gets you pretty close, sometimes dead on, but it doesn't always see it perfectly, and sometimes it's way off. So I like to start here because it gets me close, and I can usually tweak from there. You can see already the colors are a little better in this image. Now, this is a personal preference thing. So I'm going to edit how I would use this, and I'll show you guys a few different ways how I would like it. I like my tones a little more neutral towards maybe slightly cool, kind of more of a Fuji film pastel look. That's just my personal style and the film I shot with. So I like my digitals to look the same. Some people like things a little warmer, and I'll show you how the presets adjust from there. So right here, just with auto, I'm not going to tweak the white balance anymore until I start messing with the preset itself. Again, I have just Refined 1 on this right now. I could literally stop here. Let me go to crop. And for those that don't know, most people that shoot film tend to go to a 4:3 crop if that's what you're going for. And it just helps give you a little more of that tighter crop, and it looks amazing. So far, all I've done on this, let's just go and reset all, Refined 1, auto, and exposure. I could stop there. It'd be perfectly fine image. Now what I want to do is I want to push it to a little more of a softer film look. And what I'm going to do, as you guys have seen in my other videos, you can see the light is definitely hitting her here. And I'm going to watch this as I move my exposure because I don't want to do this. This is what everybody tends to do, and it gets a little too bright. These areas get hot. It's not visually pleasing. And so what I'm going to do is bring it back down until I find these areas are comfortable to the eye and nothing is getting too hot. And what I'm going to do is if I want to lift the shadows, I'll lift those a little more, and that'll get us a little softer of a look. The other thing you can do if you still feel you're a little too dark in this area or you really want that pulled shadow look is just take off the contrast a touch. So right there, Very soft, very film. Maybe put her by herself. Let me see if I can get my before and after work. So before and after. Now, if I feel this is too cool and I want to warm it up a little, I would just kind of tweak this until I felt I got to the point that I wanted. Again, this is really your personal preference. You can cool it down even more if you want to kind of go for a more monotone look. But right in here is where you're going to spend most of your time. I've built the presets so the tone curve locks in your depths and your highlights and your mids. That way, all you should have to do is tweak it within this area. We can also do highlight save on this, which will help bring in some of this brightness off of this and will give you a little more leeway with the exposure and shadows. So there's just a basic refine one edit. Let's play with it a little. So I'm going to put the edit over here to the side. Let's go ahead and bring this exposure down just a touch. And let's go ahead and put Chateau on it, just so you guys can see what exactly the tones do to the images. Chateau is meant to be kind of that soft pink highlight you see on some film scans. It works really well if you're dealing with a lot of greens. Chateau kind of takes that edge off of those greens and makes them look a little more natural. But it's really just to kind of give that, I named it Chateau, so it's kind of a French Chateau, a little more romantic, a little more pink. And if you feel like it's a little too pink, when you're looking at it side by side, but of course when you put it by yourself, you really don't see it as too pink. It's more obvious when you're working by it side by side. You could honestly just kind of, let's see, I think we were at 7, so let's knock this down to 5. Just take a tiny bit of the magenta edge off. This is not where Chateau works, but it helps to neutralize Chateau just a little. So let me go ahead and put this back over here, and let's look at leather. Leather is obviously a little warmer, a little rustier, a little more like leather. So again, beautiful tones, you can just leave it right there. And that just gives you an entirely different vibe. It actually works really well with her because of her red hair, but it really depends just on the vibe that you want to give this entire shoot. I put these in here as options. So when you're doing shoots, you try to use the same presets on the entire shoot just so it has an overall same look. Let's go ahead and go back to here. And let's put this one back to neutral. And then let's look at pine. So then pine is definitely a little cooler, a little greener in the shadows, maybe a slight green in the highlight, but it's a nice monotone, kind of washed, maybe a little bit Nerizzo look. That's a film scanner for those that don't know. And you can, of course, again, once you've added your tones, you can adjust from there with your white balance and your tint and everything and give it a completely different look. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and go back to neutral here. Actually, you know what? Let me just go ahead and reset all. Now let's look real quick at, let's do refine one again real fast. And again, back to auto. And I'm going to increase this exposure, pull the highlights back. And this time I want to give it a little more pop. Maybe a little more of a slight portrait, just a little more contrasty look. And I'll put these side by sides up, hopefully, as I go in the video today. I'm going to try to do that so it helps you guys. So now we've given it just a little more oomph. So it's not quite as soft as the last image. All I did was adjust the contrast here. You can see you can go soft, romantic film. You can push it to a little more pop and punch, and it actually accentuates the colors. When you use contrast, it tends to accentuate the warmth in areas. So with that said, you can still add your tones and get those different vibes from it all together. Let's go ahead and reset all, and let's just run the black and whites on this real quick. Again, I'm using the Refine 1 collection to start, and on the other image. So this one I did black and white soft, and I'm just going to pull back the contrast a little. And I'm actually going to lift the shadows a little, just to kind of push this to a kind of dramatic soft black and white. Sometimes this one right off the bat works well, but we had a lot of light and dark here, so it needed a little extra help. And I'll show you on a different image. Usually when I work with black and white, I tend to put the second grain, the grain grit on it, because it adds a nice texture to the image that looks a little more like black and white. And as far as soften, you probably won't be able to see this here. Let me see if I can undo that and put this side by side. So what soften does is soften actually takes a little bit of the digital edge off the image without losing too much clarity. So I'm going to run soften. Let's see if you guys can see it on here. I don't think that you're going to be able to see the difference on here. It's a very, very slight soften to the image, and it just reduces, but you can see her eye is still very crisp, but it just takes a little tiny bit of that digital edge off and gets it closer to that film soft look without losing sharpness. Let me go ahead, and if you wanted to do like leather on this, it could give you a little bit of that sepia. But you'll see as we go into Refine times Caroline Tran that we actually have a sepia option in there that we worked really hard on. But you could play with these to add some tones to it if you wanted to get really super creative on this. Let's go ahead and move on to the next image. And let's play with Refine times Caroline Tran. This image is stunning. Again, a little bit warm. It's kind of neutral, but I would say it's definitely a little on the warm side. So let me just show you the white balance adjustment before I add the preset on. But first, let's go ahead and crop this and get her tucked in there nice and neat. And this is the straight out of camera. And here's auto white balance. You can see quite a bit of difference. So that is why this makes such a big difference when editing with presets, is that white balance is huge. You see the tones have already changed so much in the image by just changing the white balance. So definitely get used to doing that. I'm going to get this, try to keep that from popping up. All right, so let's move down to Refine times Caroline Tran collection. Let's go ahead and just put patina on this. I could honestly stop right there. I really wouldn't need to do anything. That's a perfectly acceptable image and a perfectly acceptable edit. But we want to play with this a little more. So let's look at, while we're doing this, of course, as I say in most of my videos now, let's watch those highlights. We've got whites. When shooting brides, you're dealing with a lot of white. I highly recommend underexposing a little bit when you're dealing with whites and you're trying to maintain detail. Because if you blow out this area, you can't maintain it back later. But if you underexpose it a little, you can always lift it in post-processing and you don't lose any data. So I'm going to just increase this a little, watching this area, and because I don't want to blow out any more of this area, let me go ahead and put on Highlight Recover, and that just helps bring this down, and if you need to go all the way, you can. And then I'm going to just lift the shadows as needed, and we could stop right there. Personally, I would like this just a tiny bit cooler, so I'm going to just cool it down just a touch. And I could stop right there. Let's see the before and after. Oh, wrong one. So before, after. Now, if you prefer more of like a, I would say portrait, not quite as, which is what patina was made to kind of simulate with some variety, is you could just start giving a little more punch. So, and that would be in the contrast. Again, typically you wouldn't add a ton of contrast, but because of the way we built the tone curve, the contrast actually works as your kind of punch meter, I would say. I wish I could rename it for the preset. Because you can see as you lift and push it, the main story, the main depth and everything stays. You're just giving it a little punch in the edges without losing too much highlights. If you guys hear construction while I'm doing this, I apologize. We live in a new townhome community, and today they are bringing in giant gravel trucks, and it's been driving me crazy, so I apologize. Let's go ahead and continue. I'm just going to go ahead and bring the exposure down a little. And there you go. So let me go ahead and put this to the side, and let me adjust it back to where we were to start. And I think I lifted the shadows a little. And so there you can see the two different edits. So we have a softer, more romantic edit here. And then we have a little punchier, kind of closer to a portrait edit over here. It's just got a little more depth. You can see patina has a little more coolness in the shadows, and it's just a little punchier in the colors. So still a very good at it. Let's go ahead and put that back over here. And patina warmed, I just want to show you the difference. It's a very, very slight adjustment, but basically there's several film photographers, a lot of different scans and looks that you can get when you're scanning. That's why I try to make these as versatile as possible, because not one scanner is the same, and batch to batch it can vary. But sometimes you get an image where there's a little more warmth in these skin shadow areas, and I tried to achieve that with adding warmed onto it. It's not quite as noticeable on this image. Let me see if I can cool this down a little, get this to work for you guys. Might have to try it on another image to show the difference. Some images it's more obvious. Let's see here. Oh, actually I just added warm to that one. Yeah, second. All right. But basically it adds just a slight bit of extra warmth in your warm areas. This also works nice if you've got skin tones, whether you're shooting on green, you got a lot of green casts, and you tend to get gray, or you're backlighting and you lose a lot of skin color. Warmed tends to help add that back in a little bit as well. So let's go ahead and kind of play with this for a second. While we've got it, let's go ahead and see the different grains. Zoom out. So here's the first grain, which is kind of like a medium format grain. Very slight, very subtle, very reminiscent to the Contact 645. And then we have the mid grain, which is very more 35 millimeter, typical, maybe kind of in between, a good black and white. And then grain plus plus is really nice. It's very gritty, very grainy, but this looks really best on your black and white images. I suggest the first two for color, third one for black and white. Let's go ahead and play with some black and white. Actually, you know what? Let me put this over here. Let me undo grain. And let's see if I did that first. Probably not. There we go. Let's go ahead and look at this in pure. So again, starting, we haven't done any white balance adjustments. This is just straight out of camera with pure run on it. And there's pure warmed. You can see just how much warmer that image got. So regular pure, pure warmed. I'm going to stick with regular pure on this. I'm going to run auto, and you can see it's quite a bit different look than patina. Pure doesn't have quite as much color shift in the blues, and doesn't have as much warmth in here, and does not have as much coolness in the shadows. These are created so you have different looks for different shoots. And different film stocks if you're mixing it up when you're shooting. This gives you the variety. All three work well together once edited, but generally you would pick one per shoot. And let's just go ahead and bring up the exposure a bit on this, watching her highlights. Go ahead and do highlight cover. I'm going to go ahead and bring it all the way down though, because this one area is just a tiny bit bright. And I could honestly stop there. There you can see we've got patina on the left, pure on the right, two very different looks from the same preset pack, but both very acceptable. I personally would probably give this a little more punch, so I'm just going to give it a little more contrast just so it has some extra depth. And let's zoom in so you can see the color differences. This one has a little bit of a color shift in the highlights here. You can see it's kind of a little warmer. This is a little crisper. That's why it's named pure. It's a cleaner preset out of the two. You can see this has more warmth in the blues than this. This is a cleaner blue. This goes a little more aqua, which is typical of a Portra and even some Fujifilm. And you can adjust that more if you needed to. And then you can see in her shadows, this has slight more of a green and punchier look in her shadow area. Zoom out. All right, let's go ahead and put this over here, and let's put on green, zoom in, and there you can see them side by side with a little bit of green. Now let's go ahead and look at a softer, more pulled look. I'm going to pull back the contrast with the shadows. I'm actually going to up the saturation just a little bit on this. And there's two completely different looks with pure. And you can see we took a lot of the softness out, made it very washed and romantic. And you could even wash it down even more if you wanted to. All right, let's take a look at this image in black and white. Okay, here's the initial black and white. Honestly, you could stop there, throw some grain on it, call it a day. It's a stunning image because it has great lights and darks in it already. You really wouldn't need to do too much to it. So I'm just going to bring it up a little just because I prefer it that way. And there you go. If you wanted to keep pushing it a little more, increase your exposure, pull back your contrast, and just play with it from there. Let's go and take this off of there so we can see it. And again, that gives you a little more of that kind of fine art, you know, film look. This is how it came out of camera. It looks amazing. You can really just find your own style with this. You can go back to a straight black and white, or you can push it a little more as needed. These presets really, again, because of the way we locked in the tone curves, it really gives you a lot of variety on just working in this area here. All right, let's move on. Try not to make this a billion-hour video. So these two images are from Lina Johansson. Love them, and you can see she was probably dealing with a little bit of a tight area. We have, trying to get a great window shot on this dress to show the lace detail, stunning details. But she had a lot of obstacles to deal with when shooting this, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well. First, let's just go ahead. I'm going to edit as is, and we can go. First thing I want to do is straighten this image up. So for those that don't know, scroll all the way down here, and you have some transform options. I like to go ahead and start with auto just to see what Lightroom sees in it. It usually reads all the vertical and horizontals and tries to find a neutral ground. But I'm going to go ahead and use the horizontal to see if I can get this a little more dead on. She was shooting at an angle to try to avoid this chandelier because of the tight quarters. So let's go ahead and do that. And then let's go ahead and crop her in for more of a film type crop. And I'm just going to get rid of these busy lines up here as much as possible and keep as much of the dress as possible. So let's go ahead and put that here. I'm actually going to do this side by side. So let's go ahead and reset that so we can look at just in the crop alone and straightening. It's a huge difference on this image. So use those tools. They really help make it look a little more professional and make it a little more, when you're dealing with obstacles like this, just a little cleaner. Okay, so let's go back up to refine one. I'm going to pop that on there, and let's just take a look at it. And there's the before and after. Didn't even need to really do anything else with this. I could honestly just go. When you're editing a big wedding, one thing you want to keep in mind is not over editing. You have so many options, obviously, is, just edit. If you shoot a good image, it shouldn't take a lot to make it just edited. If you look at a film scan before and after the lab tweaks it, there's sometimes probably not a lot of adjustments made. Let's go ahead and play with it a little. I'm going to add Chateau just to kind of give it a little more of that romantic look. And we obviously have a lot of, highlights and blowout areas here. So I'm going to use Highlight Save. Let's go ahead and put Soften on this because I like that. Going to go ahead and pull the highlights all the way back. And let's lift the shadows. Actually, I'm going to pull this down just a little. Yeah, actually, I'm going to pull it up. All right, so I could pretty much call that a day. Let me go ahead and show you before, after, before, after. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't know about, and something that I've been trying to mention more in my videos, is chromatic aberration. And what the heck is CA correct and CA correct plus? Those are actually for chromatic aberration. What is chromatic aberration? That is this fun pink stuff that you get in sometimes green or teal when you're shooting wide open against white surfaces, or sometimes you see it on white collars. We'll actually see it on the next image as well. But all this beautiful pink stuff in here. Some people don't notice it. A lot of people don't edit it out. I see it on pro photos by big time photographers all the time. something to keep an eye out for. I had no idea about it, really didn't notice it until I was shooting stock and they pointed it out to me and kicked my images back and said, you got to fix this. So I went ahead and added a sweet little tool in here, just like this, and it's gone. Already you can see the difference. You got this, it's so slight, but it's enough that it's visually frustrating to your eyes. You know, you might not know what it is, but it gives it that little more of that digital edge. Film cameras do it as well, usually not quite as bad, but it helps just soften that image visually a little more. Let me see if I can take that off. Let's go ahead and put this side by side and do the correct. Can you see the difference looking in this area along these edges up in this light? It just takes a little bit of that harshness off when you're looking at the image. There you go. Now, sometimes this is not enough. Let's see if the first one would have worked. See, it didn't quite get it all the way. It helped it, but it didn't get it all the way. Second one did take it all out. But if you needed to go a little further, because I think we have some still in here, you would scroll down to right here. Normally your lens corrections are here, and you would hit manual, and this is where it's functioning here. And what you would do is just find the tone that, you know, it's still picking up, try to find it, and adjust from there as needed. Usually you don't want to go too far, because if you have pink lips and things like that, this can actually desaturate your pink lips as well. So you kind of have to find a happy medium of the two. Let's move on. Sorry about that. And let's reset all. And it's still, when I did reset all, it still maintained the overall transform edit that I did to this image. Let's go ahead and play with this in a black and white. So there's black and white soft. Honestly, could just move on right there. Add grain grit, call it a day, move to the next image, and save yourself a ton of time. If I wanted to play with this image a little more, let's just go ahead and put mood on it. And see, actually, let me go back. Go ahead and put this over here. So here's soft, straight, and here's mood, straight. So either one is perfectly acceptable, just based on the overall vibe that you want for your shoot and for your, get back up here, and for your edit for your wedding. You know, if you wanted a little more of a moodier look, right there, one click. If you wanted a little more soft and romantic and airy, one click, BW soft, add the grain, call it a day, and move on. All right, let's move to this image, and let's play with Caroline Tran's collection. All right. So let's just talk about, let's edit first, our crop. There we go. And doing this just to make it a little, so they're the focus of the image rather than all of this space around them. So that brings us in just a little closer to them. Just a couple of shooting tips on this. I don't know, the venue and what was in front here. She shot it at 2.0, which is great. I'm assuming at 2.0 that you're trying to get a nice depth of field. The easiest way to do that in this circumstance is to pull your subject further away from your background. At 2.0, if you moved about 10 feet, towards the camera and backed yourself up, these trees and woods would have softened a little, and it would have had a little more air and breath around it. Sometimes that's the biggest difference between people who are like, my stuff doesn't look like, the film photographers. Sometimes it's the shooting environment and how they angle their subject and how they create space around their subject. It's not quite the actual film. It's not quite the way the film was scanned. It's actually the air and breath and light that they give the images. So your shooting style can play a huge role in achieving that look that you want. A preset can't do that for you. You have to shoot for it. The preset gives you the last editing step to it. So for this image, these are distracting. I would have pulled them up a little bit away from the background, still shot at 2.0, maybe even widened it up a little more. If you're shooting far away, you can kind of do that. Sometimes I shoot as low as 1.2, just depends. But it would have given you a little more air, a little more of that depth of field in the background, and made it a little breathier. So let's go ahead and edit this though, because it is a beautiful image. It's a great moment between the bride and groom. Let's go ahead and start with pure on this. There's pure straight out of camera. And I'm going to go ahead and let's throw auto and see what happens. See, auto doesn't always work. To me, it's still a little too warm, a little too punchy. I'm going to go ahead and hand tweak this myself. So let's get the exposure up. Now for this, again, we need to watch this white area because it is a little bright. So we could have probably shot this just a little under to maintain the highlights here, but it looks like I'm getting some back with the edit. So I'm going to go ahead and just edit as needed. Increase the shadows to give it a little more air and breath. I'm just keeping an eye on this area here. Let's do highlight recover. And you see highlight recover. Let me undo that real quick. Let's take a look at that again real quick. Nope, wrong one. There we go. So for highlight recover, right there is the difference. Let me go and put this over here for you real fast. So huge difference just with highlight recover. We can see there's actually lace all the way down the back of her dress. Excuse me. All right, let's go ahead and lift this up. Bring that all the way down. And let's work with the white balance a little bit. And you can see, what do we see here? A little bit of that chromatic aberration, actually a lot of it. Look around this collar, around the edges, around here. We'll fix that in a minute. Let's go ahead and play with color for a second. I'm actually going to cool this down just a little. Actually, I think that's all I would do. And I'm going to pull back the contrast just a little to see if we can take a little of the harshness out of the environment off. If I can get a before and after out of this. No, it's the side by side, so there we go. Let me go ahead and do this real quick and undo. There we go. So there's the before. Oh my gosh. Before, after. There we go. And let's go ahead and play with the chromatic aberration. I do not have that in this collection. That is in the Refine 1 collection. But let me show you real quick how it does work instantly to take all that off. We would want to tweak those color adjustments right in here just to see if we can get this orange out as well. But it took all of the pink out of his shirt. Since Caroline Tran's collection does not have that, considering making a tool pack and selling that extra, or you can add on the Refine preset pack or the Refine 1 collection. But if not, just scroll on down and do it manually. And by that, you would just look at the pinks, start with the Defringe. I usually start with about 2, see if it's enough. We still have a little more, so we probably have to go up to about 3 here, maybe 4. And then for this area, let's go ahead and do this. The hue is in here. Let's see if we can get that off. That helped a bit. There you go. And that's how you can edit that image. Again, here's the before and after. All right, let's do black and white on it real quick, and then we'll be calling it a day on these edits. Let's see here, black and white. And due to all the contrast we already had in this image, go ahead and lift. Keeping an eye on these highlights, we might have to work on that a little bit. Let's start with contrast, pull it back. Black and white does not work as well on this image because the background is very busy and it doesn't set the couple off. There's nothing like color to keep them separated from the greens. So I probably wouldn't recommend this image in black and white. So let's go ahead real quick since I undid all of it. Let's go ahead and do patina on this real quick just so we can take a look at it. Going to increase exposure, going to highlight recover, and adjust from here, adjust from here. Just playing with it to get the greens. I'm watching the greens and her skin tone on her to get this close. And then, yeah, we still see the detail in her dress. Let's see if this works. That's before the tweaks. So before, after. And that's patina from the Caroline Tran collection. So I hope this video helps you guys see a little bit of variety of what you can do with the presets. I am taking submissions for future videos, so if you would like to be included in a future video, send us an email with a few raw files, like 1 to 3, to editrefined@gmail.com. I'll pop that on the screen here for you guys. And we're going to start doing this weekly and going through a few images and giving you guys some tips and tricks. And be sure to subscribe down below and share this video with your friends if you think it would be helpful. And I hope you guys have an amazing day.